We want to see what we're doing is having a positive impact or is making a change somewhere. Working with startups, that energy they bring, their successes become your successes. Their struggles become your struggles.
Just a quick reminder for you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better.
Hey, it's Ari. Welcome to another episode of the Made in America podcast. Today, I'm with Ryan Bauer, CTO of Verico Technologies. Ryan, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure, Ryan. It's the Made in America podcast. So we start off with the same two questions. What do you make and why do you make it?
So we are a service provider, custom coating roll-to-roll products for a variety of industries in a contract manufacturing sense. Why we do it has changed quite a bit over the last few years. Why I do it, why we do it now is we want to be part of technologies that are going to change the future.
Wow, that's a nice, concise, be part of technology. Somebody prepared. Let's go back to what you guys do and make sure we just repeat that so everyone understands. So say it one more time. What is it that you guys do?
We custom coat products in a rolled form. So the coatings we apply are usually some sort of coating that has a purpose, and it needs to be in a sheet or rolled form to function. So we touch things from membranes, photovoltaics, protective coatings, anti-oxidation coatings, the substrates, wide range. The industries we touch, very wide. So it's very hard to own it on one piece.
So give me if I'm somebody in the regular world, where do I see or interact with what you guys do at Verico?
The easiest ones to describe would be like a window protective film. So you want to protect your new Tesla's windshield from chip scratches because now your windshield replacement isn't a $500 windshield replacement. It is a $3,000 windshield replacement with all these sensors and everything inside of it. So
is that right?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
So a protective film over that makes sense. Other places we wouldn't see it, wouldn't necessarily recognize it. Your filters for water, RO filters, things like that. Those are all coated products. So they have some sort of base support. You'll see as like a non-woven fabric. Then they're coated with something that actually does the filtration.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that either. And so that might be something that you guys would do.
That would be something we would do.
So, you had talked a little bit about that you guys are in contract manufacturing and that your why has sort of changed. So, let's kind of maybe take a step back because I actually think the journey of Verico is kind of an interesting journey, a journey of reinvention, of one of sort of refinding a footing in the marketplace. And I think could be really interesting to the audience. So let's just kind of go there. I know you're kind of young and when it comes, well, maybe in real life, but also at Verico. But maybe let's just go back even before your time and just sort of talk about the history of the company and all up to like the last few years.
So Verico Technology started out as a different company. We were Presstech. Presstech was a leader in making offset printing plates. That technology has been around for a very long time, had a lot of market applications. It's been affected very strongly by digital printing that has really taken over most of the applications where it was. So Presstech had a very large presence, built up to a very large company.
When did it start?
Presstech started over 50 years ago.
Okay.
The printing plates we made were a great business. It built the company up to a very large size, multiple locations over the kind of Northeast U.S. As digital took over, Presstech had a bit of a failure to realize the market change and suddenly had some very large declines to the point of bankruptcy about 8 years ago now.
Okay.
There it was bought by a private equity firm and some new management was brought in. We did a mass consolidation of all our sites to actually our Enfield site here in Connecticut. And we released some new product lines to stop the bleeding, right? But the print market still in decline, even with the new products, newer technologies that really changed how some people are doing things, made it a lot less environmentally impactful, energy savings, water savings. There's still a finite life to it. So right prior to COVID, the idea was let's use our expertise in the market, let's use our equipment, which is standard for a lot of coating applications, to start doing contract manufacturing. The company was rebranded as Verico. A couple other smaller companies were bought and consolidated under it. From there, COVID hit. So we had 2 customers on the line prior to COVID. With COVID, there was a lot of pause and uncertainty. We moved forward with the customers we did have, but those projects ended pretty quick. The marketing really wasn't there, especially during COVID, where there's not anywhere to go and kind of meet people.
Yeah, hard to find. Again, COVID sort of made it a little bit difficult unless you were in very specific areas to find new customers. It's hard to build new relationships. Yeah.
And trade shows weren't really an option.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think we understood where we fit yet. Flash forward to about 2 years ago, I was brought on with we need to make this a valid business. So we took really the printing plates, what we had been making, those kind of sat on the sideline, basically continued making those, but really don't put much effort into, new developments there. And we need to go out and find total coating customers. Part of that journey is we had to decide what makes us different. We had to do basically an internal look and say, what do we have? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? So we did a whole rebranding effort. We did a new website. We had to really define who we were and what we wanted to do and how we wanted to do total coating. We are a bit different than most. Most companies that do contract manufacturing in our realm, they're a company that has a lot of internal products and they need things to fill the lines when they're not making them. Our focus is a little different. We are trying to focus solely on contract manufacturing, so we don't have necessarily an afterthought approach to our customers. Another big differentiation is we are a very open and transparent company. So our customers, when they come in, their product's being made, they're allowed to be on the line. They get process data. They can be part of the manufacturing process, and that has really helped us appeal to startups. We don't want to make commodities. We don't want to make things that are the same in, day out, kind of, boring run-of-the-mill products. We want to make things that are new, innovative. The way to attract that is really attracting startups. They're the ones that are really kind of popping out these new ideas. We need to prototype this, proof this, revise this. In order to help them do that, they want to see what goes into the manufacturing. They're not experts on coding. They're experts on their technology, but they need to see that part of the business. They need to see what it takes to make it. There's some risk that comes along with that. We give out the process data used to make our customer stuff. So if they wanted to go somewhere else, they could. They have all the tools. They have all the knowledge. We decided we want to keep customers because we're servicing them well.
So the idea being, so let's just go, let's rewind a little bit. So we sort of have a little bit of like a, buggy whip manufacturer in an automobile world situation to sort of start this off, where the business is sort of making something that's being technologically made obsolete. And just quickly help me understand how is the connection made between that old business and where you guys are today? Like, what was that core understanding, that core of the business that you guys found that could move forward?
So we had to look at what we had, right? We know the markets we're in are declining. What we're making is declining. So what is the rest of the company outside of the products we have? And we have coding expertise.
Where was the coding expertise related to the original business?
So printing plates are a coded product. So we were sorry. No. Let me rewind. The printing plates are basically you have either a metal or a polyester substrate that you're putting multiple layers on. And our printing plates have basically a thermal absorbing layer that protects the metal from getting too warm, a photoreactive layer that a laser gets shown on to expose, and then a silicone layer that repels ink. So
it doesn't get stained.
Well, where we remove silicone, ink sticks on the printing plate. So the photoreactive layer gets patterned, and then that ablates off the silicone. It gets washed, and then that becomes your printing plate. So you put a reverse image on it. From there, right? We have coding expertise. We have coding equipment.
Because that was a sub-process inside of the process. So you really had to, the company had to sort of take a step back and not just look at what's our end game, what's our end product, or even really what's our end customer buying from us, but break it down into all the individual steps of like, what are we doing within this process to develop it? And is there something in there that could stand on its own?
Yes. And from there, when we saw that these are very important skills to have, they're not very common in the market. Coating companies are not. Most people don't know what I do,
Right.
family included.
Yeah.
So it's not something that people think about very often. When we go into now companies that are looking to make their products and they think about how are we going to make this, and they say, oh, roll to roll sounds good. And roll to roll starts as a roll product, ends as a roll product,
yeah.
and continuous. So that's where we said, okay, we have this technology, we have this capability, we know what we're doing there. How are we going to use that into making money? And it was, well, let's make other people's products. We know our products have a finite life. So this is what we're going to do.
Because and the bet is that it's better to have someone with coding expertise doing it rather than vertically integrate, which is essentially what you guys did, right? Because your old business could have actually used an external coder, but instead did it itself.
So that's the conversation that, I mean, everybody who's approaching the market, do we want to buy our own equipment, learn how to run it, maintain it? And as startups, their focus or their expertise isn't in that.
Right.
So that's what we can provide without them having to relearn it, rebuy equipment. And capital equipment is not cheap, but the expertise, the skill set is really the important part there. It takes a long time to build and isn't very common.
Right, to learn how to do it. And so, I mean, so let's go back to so you figure out we've got this process that's demanded in the marketplace, and then let's figure out how we do this for other people. So how do you get that off the ground? Like, how do you get out there? Well, rebranding was an important piece. You bought some companies,
So the getting it off the ground was one of the hardest challenges. You can't go to a directory and say, who needs coding?
Right.
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
There's no trade show that says everybody who needs coding is going to be here. So we had to go through and do some basic market research on where this is being used. And a lot of that was a bit trial and error where we would fit into there, or whether we had capabilities in certain places. The first year, we were hitting a lot of trade shows, and a lot of them were flops. We did some independent market research. We did some reports. We leaned on a lot of our vendors or a lot of our suppliers that said, hey, where else are you seeing this equipment being installed and being used? Where else are you seeing coding lines going in? Last year, we brought on a fairly experienced sales director who had been doing contract manufacturing and coding for quite some time. That was a huge benefit. Some existing contacts, but also what markets we know we can hit, what markets are going to be a stretch for us right now, but we should hit in the future. So really, we had to kind of build our own business and marketing plan. We had to do major rebranding. Our website was pretty antiquated. We had to redo that. We did some promotional videos and then trade shows, trying to figure out, is this market a good fit? Is this the right trade show for this market? And that a lot of that was trial and error.
So like, what trade shows are you, to the point, there is not a coding trade show where customers are coming. So you've got to figure out where are your customers going to be and go to their trade shows?
So our trade shows are almost all market driven. So hydrogen economy, okay. Hydrogen's electrochemical membranes are a really big part of what we do.
Got it.
So hydrogen shows, people talking about, hydrogen economy driven trade shows are one of the big ones. Separations. So any of the ones that are water use and reclamation, WEFTEC is a huge trade show.
What's it called?
WEFTEC.
I've never heard of it.
It was about 2 weeks ago in Chicago.
Got it.
Battery and electronic vehicle shows,
Sure.
but they're all market driven. And sometimes we go to one and say this market may be of interest later, but not today.
And so you found somebody who had sales experience in contract manufacturing for membranes and brought them on board?
For a variety of products.
Yeah,
yep.
that's what I meant.
So, and yes, we brought them on board, and that has been a huge benefit. Having the right experience, just like on making products, having the right experience in sales is just as critical.
Got it. And so ultimately you're looking at, we got this product, we feel like we can find some demand for it. And now we're going to start finding customers. So kind of walk me through that. You said you had some actually, before I get to that, you said when you switched over, you did a couple acquisitions. What were the purpose of those acquisitions?
So most of it was coding equipment and warehousing space. So our site in Enfield used to be a company, Anacoil, that did anodizing and basically a very cheap printing plate.
Got it. And so you found some other equipment to bring in to help kind of beef up what you guys needed.
Right. So in the first year, a lot of that was defining what else do we need for equipment capabilities to touch all these markets. And that was a very large exercise. And where do we need to put our money immediately? Where can we wait?
Yeah, that's actually a big deal. And so how are you sort of balancing, like anytime you're trying to pivot or build a new market, these are like hard questions to answer, I feel like.
They are. And we didn't hit them out of the park the first time. We identified last year there's about $500,000 of equipment that we had to have. If without this equipment, we could not touch anywhere near where we needed to. So we made those initial investments. And then now we're looking at kind of, as we're getting more familiar with each market and what each market demands, we're saying, if we really want to tackle this market, we need to add this. Now that that's becoming a lot clearer, and that's gotten clearer through experience, talking to everybody who's making products in those markets, that has now become a pretty in-depth capital plan.
Yeah.
And as of right now, I feel like we're well equipped to handle most things in the market. There are some specialty applications that are very lucrative, but require a high level investment that we're not ready for.
So what, do you partner with someone to get those done, or you just pass on that?
Depends on what it is we can handle. If we can handle it with, let's say, a partnership. So universities actually have a lot of coating technology and equipment. UMass Amherst has a pilot coating line.
No way.
And it is a very inexpensive line to rent and operate. They have a very good rate if you're an in-state or a university-driven organization. For us, we pay a little more, but it's still a very good value, and it lets us get some things done without having to invest in a whole new pilot line ourselves.
Because are a lot of the items multi-operational, where like sometimes you guys could do the majority of it, but at the end you need one little specialty application, or is that pretty rare?
That's pretty rare. Occasionally there's a certain process step. When you get into like filtration or membranes, the final elements you'd use in your house, that canister style, that gets wound somewhere else.
Right.
We're producing a roll that gets wound into that.
Got it. So you're getting this whole thing done. You've got the equipment that you need. And then we talked about sort of had some customers and then struggled to find some because of COVID. So sort of you're just like, man, we're trying to pivot. We come up with this great idea. We get some equipment and then bam, now this thing comes out of nowhere.
The first couple customers, some of them were dumb luck.
Okay.
So I don't know, a web search where they're looking for, they know they need to make a coated product, and they found us via web search. Very few and far between, but some of our early successes were that.
Okay.
And that kind of gave us a little bit of motivation to, let's explore this market that just came in with an inquiry a little further. And those first couple, let's say dumb lucks,
sure.
really turned into a much bigger pie than we were ever expecting. Outside of that, then we started really trying to promote ourselves at a lot of shows, and that has been very helpful. And really getting a core client base down. Now that we have that nice core client base, seeing the customers regularly, then we started saying, okay, what other ones can we go to? We can take on a little bit more of the development products. We can take on a little bit more of these projects that we know are 2 years off from ever being made on our line. But we can help at an early stage to get a process that's going to work later. De-risk it up front from a final product manufacturing standpoint. A lot of startups are going into it with that attitude where they say, we need to know long-term what our risks are, and we need to start working on those now. That has been very, very positive for us because we are getting very good at learning about how their products scale up, how we may need more pieces of equipment to manufacture it. We may need to work through an issue that isn't an issue right now, but long-term will be. We've had a lot of changes, a lot of learnings from our customers, from everybody around us, really, equipment suppliers, into how we're going to make this customer base grow, how we're going to move into this market, what else we might need, or what else we can kind of omit for now.
How do you, when you got sort of the idea of like the startup process, what other, like, I can sort of foresee some challenges and some opportunities in there, and it seemed like the thought process to you was like, these are people that are ready to invest, that have a new product, that if it's successful, it could grow. Is that sort of the thought on that?
That is the thought, but it's not the only motivation. So the thought that, startups don't have a high success rate.
Yeah, well, that was where I was.
They don't, right?
Right.
So in every startup that comes in, they have the opinion that this is new and revolutionary. It's going to change the world. It's a
I guess you got to believe that going in, right?
You do.
Yeah.
It's a very the energy that they bring in, and I can remember the single point where I realized this is a pretty this is a good feel good. We had a startup come in and they're talking through their product, and you can see the excitement. You can feel the excitement when they're describing what they want to do. That's catching. You feel that excitement.
Yeah.
There are some startups where we know they come in and they say, this is what we want to do, this is what we want to make. There's some that we don't have faith that they're gonna make it. But that's usually not the case. When we are interfacing with startups, they're looking at manufacturing scale-up, prototyping. So they've got a base down. They've been around for at least some time and established themselves. The challenge with a lot of startups is manufacturing isn't one of their strong suits. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of back and forth, and it feels a bit like teaching sometimes, right? But the startups, they typically do well in funding rounds. It's a technology-driven one that can be proven at least at small scale in the lab. So investors are on board.
So they can pay you.
They can pay me.
Okay, that's good.
That's always a good thing.
That is a good thing.
But they're also usually open to investments. If we don't have the equipment we need to make their product, or there's a way to make it for a lot cheaper, they're open to investment. They're open to making a modification to our equipment. We are open to making a modification to our equipment. That's a two-way part.
Right.
So we can get them in. We can proof out what they want to do, and we can hopefully help them make the right investments in equipment.
What do you see as sort of the future steps, right? Like, do you envision there's a scenario where they outgrow? Like, is that sort of part of the plan, or
it's something we talk about a lot?
Yeah.
There is a very large probability that a product we're making now will surpass what we can provide them in 5 years. It's what it is.
Right.
So that's why we have to constantly keep getting out
feeding
the new
the
ones.
machine. Yeah.
The sales funnel has been very easy to fill lately.
Really?
And we're trying to get people all along the path and make sure that we're not overloaded with products all in the same phase at the same time. That can be very challenging. The other thing that we try and make sure is that we have some long-term prospects, but we also have a steady core group. The steady core group are the ones that we see every month or every quarter, depending on what their manufacturing schedule is. They're coming in regularly. Their orders are steady. We've helped them get to a point in the process that's stable. We also, not just startups, we have some established companies. A lot of materials companies don't want to make anything but materials, but they need a coded form, a sheet form of it. So interactions with those are a little more mundane. There's not the energy behind it you see with startups, but it's consistent, steady business.
Right. Sort of keep the lights on type business.
Yep.
So you can work on that. So is that sort of the idea, is maybe a little bit of a mix and look at these startups as like a nice growth energy to like keep pushing that forward?
Correct. We want to keep a nice steady base, a consistent base, but we also want to be part of the next big things. That is, we are very technology driven. We want to make sure that we're making the cutting edge things. We don't want to make the commodity thing that'll be around printing plates. We don't want to make printing plates.
And so, yeah, exactly. So when you're thinking about sort of optimizing for that market, that's where we sort of get down to the differentiators of what like startups really care about. And this is where you guys came up with this idea of transparency as one of your key differentiators.
Yeah, and that has been probably the most powerful. The startups like to know what goes into what they're going to be doing.
Yeah.
They want to have options. They want to see that. We know that if we kept all the information, you can keep them captive. You can keep a customer captive to a point. That's not where we want to be. And it's not how I wouldn't feel good about being in that business.
Yeah, we've had a couple over the years. We've had a couple of startups on, and one of the things that I remember from some of those conversations was like, not, I don't know if they would say captures. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but certainly didn't feel like a partnership.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that, and I think to do our job well, we do need some of the expertise that the startups have and their technology they're bringing in, and showing them how that is translating into a real world product or a real world challenge. So we have to have them there. It helps speed the development process. We get advice from the startups on certain aspects of their product. We provide them with feedback, like if we could change the rheology a little bit, this would be this defect would be a lot less common. Things like that. It's a very back and forth with most of our customers, which it feels like the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm. How do you think about, like one of the challenges I could envision with startups, or let me even ask it a different way. With manufacturing, generally speaking, the more you can do the same type of thing over and over again, the more you can sort of trim costs, improve efficiencies, and so forth, right? So obviously in contract manufacturing, the shorter the line or the shorter the run per time, the more you've got startup and change costs. And then every time someone comes up with a new great idea of like how to just tweak this one little way, and maybe, I see you're smiling, so maybe you already know where I'm going with this, but, it's really easy in sort of, AutoCAD or SolidWorks or whatever to make a change, but that doesn't mean it's very easy for that change to be made in the real world.
No.
And I can sort of envision that those things could be huge challenges for Verico.
So we have our full-scale manufacturing equipment, and if we have a process that's working there that we want to tweak, we always do it lab scale or pilot beforehand, right? We say, we think we have something promising. We think we have a change that'll work. Let's do it at a small scale and not waste a lot of money, potentially making bad product, tying up a line that's very expensive just due to its size and its value. Let's do this at small scale. Let's do it on a pilot line. And
so we'll just quickly, when you say like a pilot line versus a production line, I mean, it's got to be the similar equipment, right? I don't know how you could...
Similar equipment. It's size. So our main line is 65 inches wide.
Okay.
Pilot line's 7 inches wide.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So you're saving on materials, which is, on a lot of the startups, that is one of the biggest costs to them.
Really?
They don't have let's say a downstream or an upstream manufacturing process set up yet. They're making polymer in 1 gram batches and scraping their beaker off so we get a jar of pencil shavings. So there's challenges sometimes. A lot of times their materials, what's going into it, is the limiting factor of what we can do. So not even just cost, but even just the rate at which they can produce the materials they need to handle not just the normal manufacturing, but also any sort of development work they want to do.
Right.
So getting it down to a smaller scale really helps that process. We have used a lot of pilot lines on a rental or contract basis in the past. For 2024, that is our head capital item, is our own pilot line.
To have your own pilot line so that you can sort of play around with it on your own.
Play around with it and modify it if needed.
Well, yeah,
So,
of course.
so on the contract side of things, that is one of the challenges. If we need to put something in, we need to put there's a solvent that now we can't handle, that we need to put a solvent recovery system in. We can't do that if we're contracting out.
Right. Okay, so getting back to it, so the way you try and get around these changes is by leveraging pilot, you were talking about?
Leveraging pilot, and then a lot of times these changes that we want to make, we can tie them into a standard production run. The last hour we're going to try a different formulation, different dilution, all these things that we can kind of tack on to the end. When you said startup and changeover costs, that is one of the most expensive pieces. The line is essentially idle instead of making product. Mm-hmm. So it costs just as much per hour to set up a line as it does to run a line. We like to give our customers an idea of, hey, if we're going to run a 5-day run, this is what the pricing looks like. If we're going to run a 3-day run, this is what it looks like. So they get an appreciation for what the scale looks like. That is very helpful in their planning steps to know that, hey, if we can tie these 4 different runs together, you're saving quite a bit of money. We do like to show that and highlight that right from the beginning. And typically we will show, hey, based on what we've seen, at least in, let's say, these first 3 trials we've run with you, this is what long-term pricing would be like at each volume step that we've identified together.
And do you see a path to mass? I don't even know if mass production is the right sort of term, but like, do you see a path over a much longer horizon for them to continue to grow with you guys? Or do you sort of educate them and say, like, at some point, you would recommend they move on?
We haven't had anybody get to the point where they've gotten to close to outgrowing us.
Got
right?
it.
We're fairly more early stages or smaller runs. When that comes, there's a big question. There's a couple different avenues the company could take. They could procure us.
Right.
That could happen. They could build their own coating lines. They could find another contract manufacturer with more capacity. There's a lot of different options in that. We usually ask our startups what their exit plan is, right? Are you looking to get this prototype, maybe get a little bit of market success and sell off?
Oh, fair.
Right? Because
What's their exit strategy? Sure.
We have to know we really want to know their exit strategy. And a lot of them are very open with that information. No, we want to grow and maintain our own manufacturing. Awesome. We want to sell out. We just need to scale up and prototype. Great. Knowing that in advance lets us plan line capacity and what projects we can take on or not take on.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So when you guys think about what you're trying to do to optimize your business, how do you think about that? Because you're like, in some ways, you got to figure out how to optimize for many, many other businesses, right?
So that has been one of the challenges. What's important to one market is not important to others. What drives the cost of one product is not what drives the cost of another product. There's ones there, the raw materials, both substrate, coating fluid, very cheap. Line time is the biggest issue. It runs slow and takes forever to make. Okay. There's ones where what the support you're putting it on is the single most expensive piece, and every square foot of that is worth way more than anything else.
Oh, yeah.
There's ones where your fluid is the most expensive. Identifying with the customer which of those is their biggest cost or a relative scale of cost ahead of time shows us which mode we need to run in. Are we running in a time efficiency mode? Are we running in a substrate efficiency mode or a fluid efficiency mode? Those 3 really cover a lot of the challenges we see. And sometimes there's 2 that are matched or all 3 are equal, but it lets us know where do we want to take our waste? Because there's always waste in your process, right? Do we want to take the waste as time and conserve materials? Do we want to conserve time and waste materials? And that's different for every single application.
Sure. So that's a really interesting, way of looking at it. You know, broke it down into like kind of categories. And then, so what do you think as Verico, how do you guys, like, what process or what sort of like investments do you make to sort of outside of just equipment to drive that efficiency in the process?
So we don't have many things that touch everything. We know energy cost is one of the biggest. So that has been one of our biggest focus this past year is trying to drive down our energy costs. Very energy intensive process. There's the just running of rotating equipment, which is an electricity user.
Right.
There is a lot of heat that goes into evaporating solvent or drying. So that becomes one of the big costs. And then actually HVAC is one of the biggest. A lot of our customers, a lot of our products have to be very narrow temperature and humidity ranges. Humidity has become a larger challenge with some of our products. But so a lot of our energy goes into kind of HVAC controls. So we've done quite a lot of work with a couple entities in the state, through Eversource doing energy efficiency upgrades. Couple other smaller projects on, let's say, process efficiency. And hopefully we'll be undertaking a couple more of those this year, mostly related to switching out between products. How can we make that process more efficient from a time and manpower savings? We did have to buy some equipment to give us better offline cleaning allowances. So we have a coating line, which that's a fixed asset that is it used or not used. All the supporting equipment around it, mixing tanks, pumps. If you have only one pump to do these 4 products, that's the only one that fits.
Yeah.
So now you have to wait on that.
Clean it, wash it. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. What about from like a staffing perspective? I think about, do you need to find inherently sort of more skilled, I think maybe is the right word I want to say, staff who can like sort of, I don't know if it's really switch on a dime, but it feels like you're kind of coming at it. There's a lot of different things going on.
Our core, let's say, operator group, very skilled at their jobs. We've had to kind of refocus, how we want them to run, and that's a big change for somebody. Back during COVID, making just our own internal products, time was of abundance. Mm-hmm. That was our biggest resource. So we really focused on material savings. If this takes an extra hour, but we can save a couple square feet of material, do it.
Yeah.
That has shifted.
Yeah.
That has shifted tremendously. But our operations staff has been fairly flexible and fairly nimble at adapting to that. Right. The engineering staff, finding somebody with a coding background who is, let's say, open to a new opportunity in this area is not easy to find. So we did some kind of new hires that we've had to kind of grow the talent pool internally. And I think that is going to be the case going forward outside of, let's say, sales and marketing. So we did have to hire on some new engineers. We transitioned some of our, let's say, tech support and R&D chemists over to the contract manufacturing world. They've taken to that actually probably stronger than anybody because they're developing new stuff all the time.
Yeah, they're probably like...
They were very happy with that
kids
move.
at a candy store. Yeah, they're happy.
So staffing has not been a huge challenge as of yet. We are kind of reaching the limit of what we have now, and this next wave of growth may yield more staffing challenges than we would like to see.
Yeah.
So that has been a big challenge.
Yeah, sounds like you're pretty lucky because a lot of other manufacturers have been really, really challenged with this staffing.
The state offers a ton of resources on both staff hiring and then staff training that are just feels like a very good job of making sure that when we are in need of this service, it's there and available.
Like what have you used?
So like Constep, the big one, Forge, fairly new to Connecticut, but they've been in Massachusetts for quite a while, a nonprofit kind of business development roles. They always offer, a lot of training programs for in-house staff training, from a lot of quality management training, which is something that we do need to undertake at a very rapid pace. So there's a lot of, at least, support functions the state offers that it's very nice to have that in our back pocket. Finding them, maybe not the easiest until you get in contact with the right people. I do have to say that Paul Lavoie has been very instrumental in helping us identify where we can access some resources.
Got it. Having a little guided concierge there.
It really feels like you have somebody that's helping you navigate basically free of charge from the state level, which is a very nice support feature to have.
That's great. What do you like the best personally? What do I
like?
About what you're doing at Verico and all the changes you've made? Because we didn't really talk about it specifically, and I know a lot of people don't like to talk about themselves, but you've really been tasked with driving this transition and growing it and pushing it forward. And so, I'll give you the credit that you probably won't take for yourself. And I'm just curious, in this transition that you've been experiencing, what do you love the most about it?
You called me young earlier.
Yeah.
Something I'm noticing, and it definitely is one of those things that drives me, is the younger generations, we don't want to come to work and do our job and get a paycheck, right? There has to be some other factor that motivates us. We want to see what we're doing is having a positive impact or is making a change somewhere. Working with startups, that energy they bring, their successes become your successes. Their struggles become your struggles. So there is an air of accomplishment for when something goes well. Seeing the startups we're working with succeed is what drives me forward. Seeing that their products are now making it to market, they're making a change. They're doing something positive to the world. Lets me go home at night and say, I am making a good difference. That is what drives me forward.
Wow, that's awesome. That is a very motivational thing that I bet you jumps out of bed every day.
And the energy they bring helps support that all the time. It is a different world.
Wow, that's really cool. Ryan, it's been super awesome talking to you. I'm going to ask you some wrap-up questions and we'll put it to bed. If you had to do something other than be CTO ++ at Verico Technologies, and could be anything in the whole world, but it had to be something different, what would you do to spend your time?
So Going over this question, I had two different thoughts. And one of them is money no object? Because if it is...
Money's no object.
Okay. I would love to do outreach for getting utilities and clean water to underserved populations. That is something that I think is a desperate need, and really where I could make a positive impact.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Money was an object. I'd like to try farming.
Really?
Farming, yeah.
You had two answers. I love it. Do you have a favorite business book?
I'm going to go back to a very cliche one, but it's something that's been popping up quite a bit lately in my life. Given the amount of change I've had to see and deal with, my cheese. It's going to say classic. And it is, I think that was my first job. I got that book as a gift from my manager.
Oh, that's great.
Maybe that was a little directed, and maybe some things he saw, but it really, there's nothing static in life, right? There's nothing steady state as much as we want it to be. And we need to adapt constantly.
Yeah, man, there's one constant in life, and that is change. That's great. Ryan, what's something that you learned early in your life or early in your career that you think's helped propel you to all the success you've had?
It was advice from one of my first managers, and he said, every day we're working on these projects that are huge. The scale is tremendous. You feel stalled. You get dejected. Accomplish one thing today, every day, no matter how small it is. So you can look back and I made progress today.
Yeah, man. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. What's something that you learned later in your life or later in your career that if you could go back and tell younger Ryan, and if he had listened to you, it'd really make a positive impact in his life?
Reach out for help earlier. If there's something you're struggling with, if you need assistance on something, reach out for help earlier. As soon as you identify that you may have a shortcoming, you don't have a skill set, or you don't have a resource you need, look for it.
Was that something that you struggled with early on then?
It was. It was.
What was like, it seems like maybe something you've gotten over. So what was the mental block? Like when you look back and say, what was the root cause of that? How would you kind of coach yourself to get past that?
I felt like I needed to take everything on myself, right? I needed to be in charge of this. I needed to be the one who fixes this. And that led to a failure very early on in my career where I bombed a project. And as soon as I walked over to the right people and said, guys, this isn't going to work. I'm in trouble here. They said, all right, let's all get together and work on this. And all of a sudden I looked around the room and everybody doing their piece that they were skilled at, seeing that all come together. I said, I should have done this. Let's go.
That's what leadership's all about. That's awesome. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on and sharing both your journey and your background and what's going on at Verico. It's super interesting. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ari. It's a pleasure to be here and great talking to you.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by CompassMSP.
Thanks for listening and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a strong manufacturing community, and it would be impossible to do without all of you.